So do you believe God? Do you believe in his goodness and his strength and his presence, and not just as an intellectual concept, but as a lived reality? I know this is something that I can sometimes find really challenging, to continue to trust God and walk out a deep and profound faith that's bigger than circumstances that I see around me. In Numbers chapter 14, we see this kind of an experience. The children of Israel had journeyed through the wilderness. They'd seen God part the waters of the Red Sea. They'd seen God provide the 10 plagues of Egypt to free them from the world's greatest superpower at that particular point in time. They've seen the presence of God with them in a pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. They've known God's provision and his strength. And God has brought them right to the edge of the promised land, the land that he has promised to give to them. And they send some spies in to take a look around, and most of the spies come back with a really bad report. Joshua and Caleb come back and say, we can certainly do this because God is with us, we can trust him. But the others say, no, it's too big, it's too hard, the people there will overwhelm us, we cannot possibly do this. And the people panic. The people give in to their fear, even though they've seen God do so many tremendous and amazing things, even though they say they will worship him, they will trust him and follow him, they're simply overcome by fear, and they say, no, we're not going to try, we're going to go back to Egypt, let's just move on, we can't move into the land that God has promised to us. And we see these really intense and somewhat frightening words. The Lord said to Moses, how long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me, in spite of all the signs that I have performed among them? I find this a really challenging concept, that when the people choose to not trust in God and to give in to their fear, God says that they're treating him with contempt. They're choosing not to believe in him. And again, this is profoundly challenging, because I think for me and for so many of us, in moments of fear, we feel overwhelmed. We feel unsure. We have a hard time trusting God and moving forward into all that he's inviting us into. But God says in those moments, we're treating him with contempt. We're choosing not to believe the truth of who he is. And today, maybe are there spaces in your life where things just seem really big or really hard, where it seems overwhelming and you feel like you're having a hard time trusting or believing in God? Again, these passages would challenge us not to give in to the fear or not to live out of the fear. We certainly, all of us, will feel the fear and the temptation to hold ourselves back from what we know God is calling us into. But we need to continue to move forward, to press into God, to believe him for the truth of who he says that he is and all that he has said that he will do. I think one of the critical signs for us to recognize is when we shift our perspective from God onto ourselves, we're moving into an unhealthy place. Again, had the people of Israel done what Joshua and Caleb did and keep trusting in God, keep seeing the goodness and the power of who he is, they would have seen the obstacles as something that God could overcome. But when we start to focus on ourselves, our own abilities, our own capacity, our own strength, our own weaknesses maybe, we begin to feel overwhelmed and uncertain. And I think too, when we get to a place where we start to focus more on self-preservation or self-protection, rather than on the goodness of what God can do through any particular moment or challenge in our lives, we will begin to give into fear. We'll begin to hold ourselves back. We'll begin to move away from what God is inviting us into. And so as you experience this devotional now or whenever you happen to see it, is there something that God is inviting you into? Is there a space that God has called you to move forward, to trust him, to take some steps of obedience, to share your faith with someone else, or maybe just to choose to receive his peace even in the middle of a hard space? Are there places where you're having a hard time believing God or trusting in him? Maybe you can recognize that you've started to give into thoughts of self-preservation and protection rather than trusting in the goodness and glory of God. Again, I invite you to take a few minutes with God, just to invite him to show you where are you choosing to live out of a sense of fear or a sense of self-preservation instead of focusing on God and trusting him for the goodness of who he is and what he will produce. And then just invite God to give you the strength and the empowering that you need to continue to follow him faithfully and well. May God bless and keep you.